Hey, this is Clark from Pass the Baton, where we believe ministry is a relay, not a marathon. This is Christmas, at least as I'm recording this, it's right before Christmas, pretty close anyway. And the question is, who were the wise men? Just want to just do a quick video on some things that are just tradition, some things are biblical, as far as who are the wise men. But I just had one really main thing I wanted to bring up about who they are. So a lot of this, when I say tradition, in depictions we see, as far as the manger scene, we see three wise men there. There's no biblical evidence of how many there were. Nowhere in Scripture does it ever refer to the wise men as being three. Now, there's the reasons why a lot of times I think we see three, or tradition even speaks of three, at least Western tradition, is because of the gifts. There was gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Three gifts. So probably that's where the three comes from. Now in Eastern Orthodox, their tradition is actually 12. 12 wise men. I'm not 100% sure why they come up with 12, but I know the tradition of, the 12 days of Christmas, which ends January the 6th, that is because of the traveling. My understanding is the traveling of the wise men, is they were probably there on the 12th day, and that's known as Epiphany. That Sunday, the Sunday closest to January 6th, is known as Epiphany Sunday, is my understanding, which celebrates the manifestation of Christ to the Gentiles, which makes perfectly good sense because he was manifested to them, and that's kind of a big deal that these people come from the east. The wise men come from the east. Not sure, honestly, we don't know exactly where that is. It could have been China. Could have been a lot of places, but more than likely, for the reason why I'll tell you in a moment, it was probably Persia, Babylon, in that area, because of some of the wording and so forth that we see here in regards to the wise men. Now, we see them a lot of times traditionally there at the manger scene, but chances are they were not there when Jesus was a baby. If they come from the east, they saw the star that was there. No doubt it would have taken them months to travel, depending on where they come from. There's probably a large caravan of servants and so forth that come with them, whether there were three, however many there were. Like as I've said already, there was at least two, because they're spoken of in the plural, but we don't really know how many there were that were looking, that actually came at this time. Now, the reason why it's likely that it wasn't while Jesus was a baby is because the story goes, now the story's in Matthew chapter 2. I'm not going to take time to read all of it, but we see in chapter 2, just reading, and this is from the King James, which says, "Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem." So from the east, come to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he that was born King of the Jews?" Now they came to the capital of Judah, Jerusalem. But Jesus, as we know, was born in Bethlehem, which is about somewhere between 4 and 6 miles away. But they come to the capital where Herod was to talk to him, to seek him, saying, "Where is he, this King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him." So literally understanding how Herod took this, because here the wise men come and they say, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews?" Now they're talking to the king. So understand why he would react the way he did, but obviously what he did is not right, but understand why he would be curious, why he would be afraid. So he ends up, asking for some people, chief priests and scribes, and said, "Okay, where is he?" And they want to know. So these are people that understood the prophecies. The prophecies, somewhere between 200 and 400 prophecies of Jesus that are fulfilled. And as I was speaking in church, in our church last week, that just the probability of 8 of those coming true is 1 to 10 to the 17th power, which is a 1 with 17 zeros behind it, which is astronomical. That's just 1 in 8. That is the probability of 8 of those coming true. But there's a couple hundred prophecies, and at least 60 some prophecies, major prophecies of Jesus that have been fulfilled. So it's just crazy to think of these prophecies being fulfilled. Anyway, the scribes, Pharisees, the scribes and the chief priests, they understood some of this. So Herod asked them about it. But anyway, Herod ends up saying, "Okay, kill all the male children from 2 and under." So because he says 2 and under, it's probable, or at least possible, that it had been probably at least a year since Jesus had been born. And so he said 2, so he wanted to make sure that he got Jesus in that. So we don't know exactly how long it was, but chances are it wasn't a little bitty baby, but probably had been at least a year, because Herod wanted to make sure he had Jesus killed in that group. So that's why he said 2 and under. So we don't know exactly when they got there, but chances are it was a good while after Jesus was born, while he was yet a little boy, probably under 2 at least. In fact, Luke, in his writings, when he talks about it, he actually uses a word in Greek that referred to a small child rather than a little infant baby. So no doubt he was small. It wasn't just right there at that time when he was born. They probably weren't at the major scene, is what I'm trying to get out. But what I want to bring up is the word that's translated. It's easy for me when I look at the King James because I can hit the Strong's Concordance, but that word that's translated as wise men, the wise, and literally, as you look at it here in the King James, if you hit the word wise, it's actually not a word in the Greek, so it's men, at least as it is in this program I'm looking at. So one word translated as wise men, and I probably will mispronounce this, but magos, which means basically a magian. It's Oriental scientist, a magician, a sorcerer. And in the King James, 4 times is translated wise man, twice as sorcerer. Now, the 4 times as wise man, it is in this passage, as I've said, the only place where the wise men are spoke of in Matthew chapter 2. We see this. Now, the sorcerer, which I find interesting. Now, in Persian language, my understanding is this word was used of astrologers, which is a good reason. And really, when you look into the Strong's Concordance, it literally, at one point, it literally says, the name given by Babylonians, Chaldeans, Medes, Persians, and others to wise men, teaching priests, physicians, astrologers, seers, interpreters of dreams. So a lot of people believe these were probably Persians, and a good indication of why, not only the fact that these were people, they saw his star, so they probably were people that studied stars. Now, at this time period, when this was written, astrologers and astronomers kind of fell into the same group. Now, today, in our language, an astrologer would be one who basically looks at stars for signs. People talk about your what's your sign. But an astronomer is a scientist who studies these type of things. So today our language is a little different, but then it all fell under one group of people. So these were no doubt people who were smart. They were intelligent. They probably had a lot of money because they brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The frankincense and myrrh was something that was imported from Africa. It's my understanding comes from the bark and so forth there of some of the trees that's there. So it was very valuable to them to have it in the East. So they brought some very valuable things. They were probably well-to-do. No doubt had studied the stars. They saw his star in the East and followed it. So they were smart, and that is probably a good indication. It's just a weird thing. We don't know what the star was. There's several different theories of it. But the point is, they saw something and they understood what it was. Whether there's anything spiritual in their aspect of that, whether there's something that told them to go, but they had studied this and they saw his star and they followed it. They were astrologers, no doubt. Now, the Greek Septuagint, which is a translation of the Hebrew text into Greek a couple hundred years before Jesus, in the Greek translation of the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel, the same word is used that's used here when Daniel is in his captivity, when he is in Babylon, when he is over the Persians, when the king there, King Nebuchadnezzar, puts him over that group of Persia. For instance, in Daniel chapter 2, verse 48, is one place where that is used. In verse 48, when it talks about it, it literally says, and it's used several places in this chapter, and it's the only time that word's used in the Old Testament, my understanding, in that Greek version of it. But it says, then the king gave Daniel high honors over all the province of Babylon, and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. So that's what his job was. Nebuchadnezzar put him over it. But he put him over those people, which were known as astrologers, as wise men, as sayers, as seers, people, interpreters of dreams. Daniel, that was his job, but it was in Persia and Babylon. And so it's a good indication that that is what these wise men were. In our New Testament, in the King James, the only other passage, two passages that this word is used, in the King James, it is used of Elymas, the sorcerer, which is in Acts chapter 13. And it literally says, for so was his name by interpretation. It was Elymas. He was Bar Jesus. And in Acts chapter 13, he was known as a sorcerer. And also in Acts chapter 8 was Simon the sorcerer. Now, both of these weren't people that were Christians. They were people that were kind of trying to cause problems for one reason or another, but they were known as sorcerers, same word, as is translated as wise men. So the context when the King James was translating, to understand why they used this term, and I think they were probably smart enough to understand these were people that were probably astrologers or something along those lines. Anyway, that is who the wise men were. Now, whether they were there, I guess no doubt they were there to see Jesus at some point when he was a baby, but whether they were there at the manger scene or not, probably not, don't know for sure. But that's who they were. This is the wise men. They were astrologers or astronomers that had come from the east. They had come probably from Persia or Iraq, Babylon, around that area. Very interesting. But honestly, what I would conclude with, a couple things quickly. What I would conclude with is, number one, is this proved that Jesus was important not just to the Jews but to the whole world. And also, another thing about this, the main thing I see here in this passage is that they come to worship him. And wise men, no, this is cliche, but wise men do still seek him. Wise men do still worship him. And here we see that these people who studied the stars, literally, this was such a big deal to them that they left their country to worship this baby. So that's the wise men. I hope you learned a little bit from this. I hope you were able to listen to the whole thing. Until next time.